There aren't many job prospects for those who went to a Buddhist university, and if you don't fit the typical holy man mold, you may not fit in, period. But those who deal in religion have a special connection to the dead, and not all those who die can rest in peace. This is Corpse Delivery Service by I.G. Otsuka. Good evening and welcome to Manga Mondays, the bi-weekly show where I recommend you great or spooky manga. And welcome to the first episode of October, of 2. Today we're talking about a book that is undoubtedly scary and is extremely well reviewed, but despite this, I almost never hear anyone talking about this as like an all-time great or even a horror cult classic, but personally I think it deserves it. I've always been fascinated by this Corpse Delivery Service book. Like I Am a Hero, it was published by comic giant Dark Horse in the West, meaning the first omnibus sat squarely on my local bookstore shelf anytime I was there, wrapped in plastic with this weird cardboard and crash test dummy aesthetic. It was eye-catching and mysterious. Normally the only books wrapped like that were the ones with a ton of fan service. Other horror books, like those by Junji Ito, were never wrapped. What could Corpse Delivery Service hold that made it so dangerous? Well, the answer is a lot of nudity, so I guess it's still fan service, but also a lot of gore and more mature subjects like suicide and grief. Manga as a whole is no stranger to violence, but Corpse Delivery handles it with more weight than its contemporaries, and that makes it special. Here's a quote from the author that I think helps illustrate that point. The Kurosagi Corpse Delivery Service is a story I created out of my desire to write an orthodox horror story. I thought it was odd how The Walking Dead had become such a normal sight in movies and video games, how much the idea of a zombie had been taken for granted. I wanted to get back to the fear any real person would feel should death's work appear to be unfinished. And the stories do invoke fear, or at least a sense of mystery and unease around the dead, because of who we're following. We view it from the perspective of young Buddhist college students, whose schooling opened a door of opportunity to the afterlife and whose innocence and lack of job prospects made it a trivial choice to walk through that door. Wandering into horrific, unbelievable scenarios, but choosing to stay anyways and help those who died rest in peace. Speaking to their souls about what they desire, sometimes for a reward in exchange and other times just nothing. Let's talk about these characters. You get an almost cabin in the woods vibe from them, a typical group of teens, but they're a little bit more cynical and capable from their schooling. Our main character is Kuro Kuratsu. He's mature for his age and would usually keep his thoughts to himself, but is dragged into the problems of others by a desire to help out, and an ability to hear the thoughts of the dead. With a little work he can even rustle them back to life, but their confused and angry souls being pushed back into their bodies will often lash out and kill people before really being of any help. He's crucial to the team knowing what to do with who they find. The leader of the group is Ao Sasaki. She doesn't have any special powers, but she's tech savvy and a bit of a detective. She's the one who forms their group initially and is a graduate student at the Buddhist college. She scours the internet for leads and makes the final call on who to pursue next. Then we have Makoto Numata. Almost as important as Kuro, he's the badass leather jacket punk of the group with a soft heart, who swings a pendulum to find dead bodies. Wherever they go, he can douse corpses or body parts with lingering wills. Then we have Kaiko Makino, an embalmer who studied abroad to preserve corpses in America. She's critical in taking apart any bodies brought back to the base and finding out what happened to them. She's pretty serious for her age and super capable, full of connections despite her tiny size and kawaii fashion. Finally, we have Yuji Yada. He's a quiet and shy kid with a sock puppet on one hand. He can channel the thoughts of an alien light years away into it, apparently, who does most of the talking for him. It's hard to tell how much of this is an act, but I won't spoil it, just know he's no normal kid and he's probably my favorite of the group. That's everyone. Honestly, they're almost too good together. They feel like a real group of friends who will visit each other or worry about each other when somebody's feeling down. And you see them do that between their free time. Sometimes this story is called a black comedy for its humor, but to me that just feels like good chemistry between everyone. It's a joy to read, and the author is a fantastic writer. And it makes sense he'd be able to write people this well. I.G. Otsuka is a professor with a degree in anthropology who's known as a thinker on human behavior in Japan and who's also written a lot of non-fiction books on the subject. He's a really prolific dude who's done a lot. He even created an adult OVA in the 80s. I recommend looking him up just because you'll be surprised at what you find. Now let's get into what I liked about Corpse Delivery Service before getting into the negatives. Really, I've already said a lot. It's mostly about the characters. Seeing them hang out in this dry, early 2000s city life setting is really cool and nostalgic. They're dressed for the time period, and obviously you just don't see a lot of that 20 years later anymore, so it's nice. The short stories that make up the series are also super original and interesting. They're almost told like a mystery the group has to solve and watch it slowly unfold. Because it's not some big shonen thread, it stays grounded and keeps you engaged. A shorter one I like a lot as an example is when the group is sent to investigate a small town trying to be known as an alien landing site, the Roswell of Japan. They have a museum there with a corpse on display that's obviously just a dried monkey, and they're working part-time to cut crop circles directed by the alien on Yada's hand. Their boss of this part-time job is a hilarious redneck con man who has some of my favorite lines in the manga. He likes to berate Makino for being a lolly, and he likes to defend his intelligence while constantly making crude jokes. Anyways, Kuro ends up trying to communicate with the dead monkey, of course, and causes it to run out into a crop circle and uncover part of an old Russian spaceship there. They call the leader Sasuke down, who uses her computer skills to piece together a primitive Google Translate. And with Yada's channeling, they can make out what the monkey says in Russian. It's a really fun twist that I won't give away here, but I hope that kind of explains how the team works together to solve mysteries and piques your interest. Now a couple things I didn't like that much. Mainly just the art is very inconsistent and subpar. I get the feeling that at the time it was considered above average, but I would just consider it serviceable now. There are times when the characters are just totally off model that are really jarring. Faces distorted or not drawn all the way that don't seem to be a stylistic choice and are big enough to just be awkward. One that stood out to me was when the leader Sasuke had a topless scene after so much buildup of the author drawing her in underwear and no bra, implying she's supposed to have this sexy figure. It's just very underwhelming and weird to do it all if it's not going to look like her. Like, just don't do it. And besides the art, the story just jumps around a little bit sometimes. Like, there's a part where they visit Afghanistan, a huge shift in location since they're broke teens living in Japan, but there's no buildup, they're just there. Like, I get they get there because they have connections, but like, that kind of stuff costs money and they don't have money. Or like, I don't know, I would have liked to see more of how it happened. Other than that, most of the time it flows really well. The story is memorable and unique. Its horror is effective in a way few other horror manga are. Living Dead, but slow, modern, and grounded in an uncomfortable kind of way, where society moves on as if nothing is wrong, all while danger lurks underneath. Thank you for watching this episode, and look forward to our second video this month on another horror manga, or at least a spooky one. And that's all. Good night.